I'm a big believer of marketers. The only metric that really matters, doesn't matter what level of market you are, is what's the revenue you are driving, because that's what you're going to be passed or failed on. If you're working with companies who are profit driven, they are expected to reduce costs, grow revenues, and that's where AI sits. Jobs will be lost. And now we're in a space of, okay, how do we make sure that the people we have on our teams are upskilled, they're working in the spaces that they need to be, because some of the jobs that they're currently doing aren't going to be relevant in a very short space of time.
There probably will be job loss. I already know many organizations who are giving that ultimatum to their employees today that are saying, we are moving in this direction. You either upskill or you choose to leave, and you have this amount of time to make that decision.
The people are the most important part of what we do, because adoption is critical. Where are the friction points across our business? Like, where are the bits that it is taking us loads of time to do? It is menial work. AI could do that to 75%, and then we fill in the last 25%. We could have amazing tech, amazing processes, and amazing data, but if the people aren't using it, then it's pointless. You've wasted a bunch of money.
Today, we're joined by Richard Wood, CEO of Six and Flow, a HubSpot elite partner. He founded Six and Flow back in 2015 and now has grown the company quite extensively. Thank you so much for joining, Rich.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So I found Six and Flow on the HubSpot partner directory. And on it, it mentions that, of course, you launched Six and Flow back in 2015, and you knew you needed to stand out from competition. There were a lot of other lead generation agencies in Manchester, which is where you're initially located, and you needed to differentiate yourself in the market. So how would you say Six and Flow has evolved to differentiate from others?
It's kind of like a multi-part question. So when we set up Six and Flow originally as an agency in Manchester, there was a lot of lead generation agencies, a lot of PPC to landing pages. And that was the kind of the specialisms that we kind of decided to start the agency around. It worked very effectively. We were kind of approached by HubSpot to become one of their agencies to and take on the platform, start selling the platform as almost like a reseller or value added reseller, I think is the official title.
A VAR.
Yeah, but in the Manchester space, so very close knit, that everybody kind of networks, everybody knows everybody. It's a smaller city than sort of your Londons, but it's high growth and everybody wants to see everybody succeed. But so we needed a space that we still wanted to use our specialism, so the lead generation, paid media, but then have something that differentiated us from the rest of the crowd. And HubSpot was a good example of that. It was 2015 was, I wouldn't say it was at the start of the marketing automation space, but it hadn't really taken off of that. There were still a lot of companies out there who were just, let's hammer in more PPC, let's spend more money, we'll get more leads. Doesn't really matter what happens. So we're at that starting point of, okay, but those leads you've generated, what happens if we nurture them? So maybe we can turn that one lead, like your conversion rate through to sale, maybe we can just incrementally increase that. And that became the basis of how we started to engage. So yes, we want to help you fill the funnel at the top end, but generally speaking, we want to actually help you close more revenue. Now, PPC, dollars or pounds at the top, is one part of that, but actually there's so much more that we could do to shift the needle further down the stream. And that's kind of how we started to develop and differentiate.
Okay. That's really helpful to know. And of course, the most important part of marketing is looking at the full funnel. And I feel like it gets forgotten a lot of the time. How do you obviously getting those leads is really important, but then, not every lead's going to convert. So where do you store them and how do you continue to nurture, like you said? And so I've had the pleasure of working with your team, specifically for HubSpot optimization, not once, but twice at two different organizations. I brought you in because, not you, but your team in, because they were very well versed with HubSpot, and they could kind of optimize and fix what we needed. And so I know, you've evolved from sort of PPC and generating leads to inbound and becoming a HubSpot elite partner. How have you evolved given now this massive blow up with AI?
Yeah, I think it's a wild time for everybody, right? So we're at this kind of inflection point of tech and people where it's a very blurry line between the two. And the pace of change at the moment is incredible. In my entire career, which is going back a bit now, is like I've never seen anything move at this pace. So like social media came in and blew up the entire marketing playbook.
Yeah.
Marketing and GDPR came in and all those things. So everything, like we've always, as marketers, and I don't really consider myself a marketer anymore, but very much kind of that was my upbringing in my career. But I think that's we've always had these bumps in the road, and like I've always said, like marketers are very good at ruining things. Like we get given these cool toys, we got given marketing, we got given SMS, we got given social media, and eventually we end up ruining it because we spam the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And that's just it, because that's like our overlords, typically C-suite, are saying you need to drive more, so we drive more. And then there's almost like this attrition. It's almost like, like the overfishing in the seas. Like eventually we're going to run out of fish.
Run out of fish, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So for us now, the rate of change, we've had to start not just thinking, so historically we'd look at services, right? So we deliver X service in X way, and we come up with a repeatable, scalable way of delivering things. And that becomes the Six and Flow way. This is how we do our thing, and we iterate, we improve all the time. And like one of our core values is growth. So and growth is how we continually start to develop and expand and blah, blah, blah. But now we're in a space where it is physically impossible to make sure that we are always at the front of every tech piece that's being launched AI. There are so many players in the space now, it's not possible. We've taken another route of actually what won't change in that is the frameworks and how we deliver this. So like what are we trying to achieve and how are we trying to achieve it? Then the tech almost becomes we need to know what's possible with the tech, but we don't need to have a granular understanding of every tech piece at every moment in that journey, because we're using a framework that we can bolt in bits when and if they become available and if we need them. So that's kind of how we changed in terms of our services with AI. But our journey with HubSpot took us from marketing agency to marketing automation implementers to CRM implementers, and the team have either upskilled or we brought in experts in different spaces, but also services like data. So data for us has always been, well, I think when you're in a marketing space, data is data. Like you'll bring in email addresses, some of them will be shitty data. It's fine. We'll bin those off because the sales team won't like them. The sales team will shout at us for a bit, but it's fine.
Yeah.
But when you go more into the CRM space, data becomes more and more crucial. Now we're in the AI space. It is absolutely critical that the data is where it needs to be. So data for us as a service is where we're aligning. So frameworks in terms of what and how we deliver, data being the kind of the crux behind all of that. Because like with AI, you put shitty data in, you get shitty outcomes out. And that's kind of how we're approaching all of this now.
Okay. You said a couple things in there, and I was making notes as you were saying it because I want to go back to it, back to a couple of things, and then lead into what you had just finished with in the sense that like data is so important. You mentioned that you don't consider yourself a marketer anymore. So what do you I know obviously you're the CEO, you wear many hats, but at what point did you say, maybe it's not the right decision just to be looked at as or considered a marketer?
I don't know. It's a weird question. No, not a weird question. I like the question. It's I think the response is like it's difficult to kind of respond to that. As in, I genuinely think everyone is a marketer on some level. Doesn't matter who you are, or what you do. You are marketing or promoting or selling. All of these. So there's like also like who is a seller and who is a marketer. Like all of that kind of thing becomes a blurry space. When I say I'm not a marketer, it's more that that's not my function anymore. Like, but as CEO, I am marketing all the time. Like it is my job. Like I'm on a podcast with you. Like this is effectively a marketing activity, but I'm not held to account to a specific leads, targets, goal. Like that, they aren't my metrics anymore. Revenue is, and I am a big believer of marketers the only metric that really matters, doesn't matter what level of market you are, is what's the revenue you are driving, because that's what you're going to be passed or failed on. And that's where like that blurs into, that's obviously also one of my KPIs. But I think when I say I'm not a marketer, I'm not a hands-on marketer anymore. I'm not executing campaigns.
Right.
I'm involved with campaign ideas. So the typical buckets or like hats that a CEO wear is brand, culture, strategy, vision, those kind of things. And I think that's where you start to get into well, all of those sound a lot like marketing. So I still do marketing, but I'm not a marketer, and I don't
Yes.
work with clients really.
Okay. I completely understand that. And I'm in complete alignment with what you just mentioned, that marketers should be held to revenue, like continue to track to revenue, which data has a really important role in making sure that that tracking can actually take place accurately. And so you mentioned data. Now, would you say when you work with organizations to implement some of the AI frameworks that you had made reference to, would you say that that is sort of number one, reviewing the data sets?
Possibly. So I would say it's definitely like in the top three. I think so. Data is critical to the success or failure, right? Like it is. We can't do anything around that. But I think there are other elements that, and I'm kind of internally debating this as you're kind of saying this, but I would say like you also have willingness for adoption. Like, is the team
Mm.
ready to actually be doing any of this? And that then influences data. But you can also infer some of that from the data itself as well. So like if the data is a mess, like let's be honest, if somebody's implemented Salesforce 10 years ago, the admin who originally set it up has gone and they've continually bolted things off, the thing is going to look like a dumpster fire in terms of the
Yeah.
data. And there is a big project, and that's not just me. Like obviously I'd love a cheeky dig at Salesforce, but that is inherent in all CRMs, because nobody likes dealing with the admin side. That's not the fun part of the marketer's job, the salesperson's job, even ops. I mean, some ops people like the data side, but a bit more, and like the admin side, but that's another. Sorry, but I think where I would say like data is so critical to the outcome of the project, but actually sometimes we need to take a step back from those elements and just see where the organization is and whether they're ready to start going through this process. Because if you have blockers, and you always have blockers in a digital transformation project, they can derail every step past that. So let's understand who owns what in that mix. Why, like what are their wins from a digital transformation project? And AI is part of a digital transformation project.
Right.
So like what are their wins? How do we get them on side? And then we can start peeling back some of the pieces, because you will often, if you've got like a CRM, let's say, for example, somebody has Salesforce in their organization and then they want to move across to HubSpot. So like we see that, like obviously we're a HubSpot partner, so we see that end of the spectrum quite a lot. I'm sure people move the other way as well. But if you've got somebody in that space, they have probably always worked with Salesforce and want to kind of hold on to that. So we need to understand what it is that is driving them to want to stay with the system they're in, and then understanding the nuances of the data, because we need to show them, look, we are here to, like, yes, we're going to replace a system. Yes, you will need to be upskilled in that system, but actually there's a lot of pros out of us moving in this direction. Work with us to do that. So I think sometimes, like, and we've done it and we've learned from it, is there is quite often a jump into data and tech before people. And I think sometimes the people bit is the bit that will derail a project first. So all those things need to happen early in the project. But I think, and I am biased on this, but because I always think like the people are the most important part of what we do, because adoption is critical. We could have amazing data and amazing AI. Well, actually, that's a bit of a gray area now, but if we could have amazing tech, amazing processes and amazing data, but if the people aren't using it, and we come back to CRM or marketing automation, if the people aren't using it, then it's pointless. You've wasted a bunch of money. But then you get into the AI bit and you go, well, actually, are people still the most, and I'm throwing out as a question, not a statement, but are people the most important part in that now? Because there's a lot of agents, there's a lot of process, there's a lot of things that we can start to like mold together. And then you go, well, actually, yes, no, maybe, could be, perhaps. And that's where I think the interesting bit for us is like go-to-market professionals, so not just marketers, but across the whole GTM spectrum. We're now in a position where we're going, okay, the thing that we always held true, which is people, and people being like the humans come first, is that still the case? Because we've always used different tools to market to humans, but now we're in a space where we're using AI to market to humans, but we're also using AI at the other end of the scale. So we've now in a weird space where we've got AI marketing to AI to then infer back to the humans on both sides. So you're going, all right, So is the human still the most important piece of that puzzle? Yes, in my opinion, but will it always be? I don't know. So sorry, I've gone on a bit of a ramble there.
No, that's okay. I mean, you're raising a lot of questions, even as we internally at Merge Marketing are building agentic processes and workflows where now the human's removed from a lot of it. Well, we're finding, and you kind of mentioned it as well, is you still need to understand the frameworks. So you still need somebody or people or a team that understands what the system should, like, how it should be set up. But then, once it's set up and it's running, it's more of like a maintenance thing. So the evolution, like you had said, has grown and advanced so quickly. It's hard to grasp where we are even today and what's going to happen tomorrow. But that's super interesting. And yeah, as you mentioned, people are very important when it comes to adoption. I didn't even think of that about that because, it's easy as AI comes out and you can see the clear benefits of using it. It's not perfect 100% of the time or even close to that, but you still see some tangible benefits from it. So it's interesting that, and I'm sure you're running into it a lot for different reasons, whether it be, just lack of knowledge or comfort or compliance and risk and all that jazz. But adoption is so key in having that like willingness internally. So, how at Six and Flow are you starting to help businesses adopt AI? What are some of the different ways that you've helped businesses use it?
So I think there's a full spectrum of that, right? So like we've got some like minor bits. So like explaining to customers. So we started using Jasper, God, must be maybe 3 years ago, like the content writing AI tool. And that's before ChatGPT really blew up. And I think that really kind of dented, I assume, dented a lot of Jasper's like market. I have no insight into any of that, but I would assume a lot of people then shift focuses because you had more control, you could do more things, and it's expanded and became the darling of the AI revolution. But we started working with that, and it was the original conversation with clients was very much okay, so hang on, you're writing blogs for us, but you're using AI to write these blogs. And the conversation then becomes actually, no, what we're doing is we're using them to structure, research, and expand. So actually, we can do more with the same amount of times now. So, and you start getting into the whole debate over quality versus quantity when you're looking at SEO and content marketing. Are people actually reading blogs? Does it reading matter? Like all of those. And there's 1,000 debates that we could have in that. And I'm not saying I'm siding with any of them. But that's where Jasper started to come into its own right. Like, and I would honestly say, and that probably loads of people hate me for saying this, most of that content typically ends up being a bit like shit. So it ends up being the blog post that is just, it's filler content, or it's social media post that you're quickly firing past. But it's also in that kind of, it's almost like a cost of entry. There needs to be a inflection point of how much versus quality. So can you then top and tail low-end quality with high-end quality? So you've got both ends of the spectrum, like you've got quantity and quality. But that was the jumping off point for us into AI with our customers, saying, here is what we we can now do things faster and better and have more impact, and it's not changing your cost base. We didn't do we're going to charge you the same amount for this blog post, but actually now we're just going to do it with AI, and the quality's a bit less, but you're going to still pay us the same amount. That wasn't our strategy. Our strategy was like, actually, you're going to pay us this amount, we can do it cheaper, so we'll do more. And that is a good conversation to have with the customer, saying, look, this is new technology, this is a new way of doing things, but actually the impact for you, the ROI, should be significantly increased. Then the next stages start to come through with the whole OpenAI wave, like, what was it, 22, 23, whenever it was, where everybody was like, oh my God, overnight, everyone was like, ChatGPT, are you playing with it? Have you done this thing? Have you, like, you can get it to, I don't know, create recipes for you and all this kind of shit. And you're like, my biggest pet hate with the AI revolution or evolution or wherever we're sat with that now is that it became so much about Gen AI. It'll write blog posts for you. It'll create images for you. It'll do social posts. And I'm like, that is great to a certain degree, but it is missing so much of what it could do. It is like they are great party tricks, and they will incrementally move the needle. They'll reduce cost. Great, fine. But the entire internet is now flooded with the same shitty content that is like no good for anybody apart from marketers ticketing boxes, or like, I mean, you probably get them all the time, the outreach on LinkedIn.
Oh my gosh.
And you're like, does this work for anybody anymore? Because I ignore every one of them. And like when they get actually, if somebody gets one of those horrifically wrong and they're targeting the wrong person, I actually engage with those because I actually find it quite funny then. And like, I will kind of be like, oh, this is great. Anyway, that's a side story.
That flaw. Yeah. But you're right. So much, it's just created noise.
Yeah, and noise is a great example. Like it is, and it's at the point now, so many people are doing it. It is pointless noise.
Yeah.
So my point around all of that is that AI at that point promised so much, but because of how it was utilized by the masses, delivered so little. And you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of like a passing fad. And it wasn't until like even for me, you start going, well, actually, where are the friction points across our business? Like, where are the bits that it is taking us loads of time to do? It is menial work that we are having to do. You start looking at that and going, why are we doing that? Actually, there is like AI could do that to 75%, and then we fill in the last 25%. So why aren't we doing that? So with clients, that's where you start to get to. You start to go, actually, all right, let's look at your organization. Let's look at the bits that like top to tail. So Melissa, what is your role? What does your day-to-day look like? What are the bits that you need to use brain power for? And what are the bits that you're just going through the motions, or like data entry, or like those kind of things? Once you've mapped out that, then you can start to paint a picture of, well, actually, you don't really need to be doing that bit, because we could like integrate this. There's an agent that could do this. That agent could then speak to this agent. Then we can start to move on. And I think AI fell into two traps. One was everybody was like, oh, I'm going to create funny images and that kind of stuff. Like, great. But then it fell into the trap of, oh, it could do so much. I don't really know where to start. So how can I impact the business here in a way that's going to be meaningful? So that's where we kind of sit now, is that we will go into a business and we will look at what are the challenges, what are the friction points. And this is the same way we've sold marketing automation, CRM, all of those. You look at the problems, and sometimes the customer client doesn't even know that it is a problem. They have always done something in a certain way. They spend hours moving, like doing sales ops after deals close, moving into the finance team. The finance team are trawling through like CSV after CSV, Excel after Excel, like week in, week out, to reduce the same reports, and then having to give their insights off of it. So if we could get rid of the production bit and they just give the insights bit, that's amazing. But could we also then go a step further, going, actually, the insights that you are generating, what if we could then give you insights based on historical data and market data to then give like another step into your insights? So you're taking data-driven insights at a large scale that are consistent, they are happening automatically, and then we're making suggestions for you to look into things, and we're not replacing the person there. We're just saying, hey, actually, here is an area you might want to focus on based on what the data is telling us. Those kind of conversations are, for an agency like us, are how we start to make people comfortable and understand the real value in AI. And so I was at the HubSpot Partner Summit last week. And as you can imagine, AI, they just released so you can now use ChatGPT deep research within your CRM. So you can search your CRM data and do some very cool things with it. So like, show me all the accounts that have had X% growth over the last year and that kind of stuff. Amazing. And that's like, I think CRM will not be CRM as we know it in the future. It will just be a chat interface where we can ask things. It will surface the kind of reports you're looking for. And that will be where we get to, which opens up the new players and all that kind of stuff. And so it will be an exciting space, as much as people can talk about CRM being an exciting space, because it's not the super sexy marketing side anymore. So I was at the Partner Summit last week, and that was that. So AI conversations. And then, so Sarah McDevitt, who is the senior director of partner experience at HubSpot. So she is the person who is working with the partners to make sure that we're focused in the right space and we are doing the right things and we're working well with the direct team. And so amazing person, and like a very good person to also have a beer with, but that's a side story. But her whole proposal was around relational intelligence and relationship intelligence. So how we're looking at how AI is working with the people and how all these things are now fitting together. And I think that is a much more kind of useful and progressive way for people to be looking at how these tools fit within an organization.
Yeah.
Because then you get back into the one of my other pet hates with the AI space at the moment is that all of the SaaS companies, tech companies, all of the kind of big CEOs of large corporations, they're all saying AI is not here to take your jobs. Like it is, like we might be reframing. I personally think that's bullshit and is lacking a bit of honesty, because AI will 100% replace jobs. Like there will be tasks. So I can't remember who did the research, but it was graduate level, like legal jobs now. The barrier to entry is so great now because we've got AI that can pass the bar exam. We've got all of and do research in an blink of an eye, as opposed to weeks. So why would a legal agency hire all these graduates? Well, the real answer to that is because if you don't hire the graduate doesn't progress, and who fills the job above the AI past that point? So there's problems that will occur because we've gone so far down the road. But if you're working with companies who are profit driven, they have investors, they are public companies, they are expected to reduce costs, grow revenues, and that's where AI sits. And I mean, it sucks for everybody involved, but jobs will be lost. And now we're in a space of, okay, how do we make sure that the people we have on our teams are upskilled, they are working in the spaces that they need to be, because some of the jobs that they're currently doing aren't going to be relevant in a very short space of time. So we need to quickly move into a space that works. I don't know how you fix that with graduate and lawyers. That's not my space. But if we're looking at the was it the adage? It was don't be the one competing with the bots. You want to be the one who's building the bots. That is the space. And I already, with my kids now, so I've got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. And so I'm using Gen AI. I know I just said I don't really like the Gen AI stuff, but to build little movies and create images. So they write stories and have done for ages. Now we're animating those, where they're seeing how this stuff can work, because it will be a core life skill in the same way that, I mean, I predate Google in terms of schooling, but in the same way that Google changed the way that we learn, because we can now access all this information, we can now have in our pocket a career coach, a life coach, all of these things. And I saw another stat yesterday where there's using ChatGPT as a therapist actually net yields better results than an actual therapist.
Wow.
Which is wild, right? Because you're liaising with a bot, servers like silicon. It's wild. Where's the empathy come from? But actually, because it's learned empathy and what empathy should look like, actually that you can kind of see actually, well, silicon doesn't, in the same way that meat and bone doesn't have the same emotional drains in the day. So you have a therapist who's having a shitty day or too much coffee, then you're going to have a very different experience than whereas you can get consistency and blah, 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 blah. But I'm definitely going off piece now.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad this is a little bit off track, but I am glad that you're being honest about the job loss and big changes within the job market, because everywhere that I've looked is saying, it's not going to be massive employment, 10, 15 years from now is actually going to be the same. It's just going to be that the jobs are going to look different. And so I think the message is, as I'm hearing this, there probably will be job loss. I already know many organizations who are giving that ultimatum to their employees today that are saying, we are moving in this direction. You either upskill or you choose to leave, and you have this amount of time to make that decision. And so I think the messaging is you have to upskill. The how you upskill is a whole other ballgame, but I'm glad that you're being honest about it. I do too think that there's going to be job loss and some displacement.
What's the Fiverr CEO, I think it was the Fiverr CEO, but basically he released the internal memo going, all of our jobs are at risk, including mine. So even as a CEO, and so even me, so I report to a board. If that's be real about this. If AI could produce, so I have a salary and that is a drain on the company, but if we could build an agent, that a CEO agent, then that sounds horrible, but like if we could do that, then that's something that should be considered. And it is kind of almost my, as an individual now, how do I make sure that I am adding value that AI can't? And
Yeah.
I mean, that is a very difficult question to answer now, because my cousin, who doesn't work in the tech space at all, he described it to me as, he thinks that AI will put us all in a position where we are much more creative thinkers, and we're exploring more of the arts again. And he was like, it's basically, we're going to end up like a bunch of like Greeks and Romans being fed grapes while we come up with poetry. And I was like, yeah, but actually ChatGPT can create pretty decent poetry now, so like maybe we're not even going to be able to do that. We're all going to end up the people on the cruise ship in Wall-E, where we're just watching, or the battery people in the Matrix. Like, something is going to happen.
Yeah, I think about I think about this often too, and I was thinking about the creativity route, going back, and maybe, eventually we get paid for having ideas. But, there's going to be a need for people who, honestly, the trades I think are going to be very, very critical. Mechanics who can operate and fix bots, not just cars, but now you're looking at machines and robots. Anyhow, if you just ask ChatGPT how AI is going to take over, it can get very dark. And the first part, and I see this happening so much, is you as a human, become dependent on it, and you become so dependent on it that you eventually can't really think for yourself without it. And then, it evolves from there. I'll let you go down that dark rabbit hole, but it was a little bit of a scary ask.
I genuinely, and this isn't a reflection on the state of my marriage, but I genuinely think I chat to ChatGPT more than I have like in-depth conversations with my wife at the moment. And it is because I am asking it, like, and it is like, okay. So I've built a bunch of like custom GPTs that I relay into regularly. So like, I have a CEO coach that I will ask questions. So here is something that I am dealing with. Help me like understand what I should do, or like the options that are available to me. I'm not asking it to make the decision. I'm asking it to give me another viewpoint. And there's an app, like an AI, like CopyMind, I think it's called. I've never used it. This isn't a promotion for it at all.
Okay.
But I saw their ad today was basically download your brain. So like you would answer a bunch of questions and give it a bunch of insight and all that kind of stuff. So it understands you. And then you use it as an objective like viewpoint. So you take your, this is my understanding that I inferred from an ad. And so this might not even be true, but this is what I understand it to be, is that I download my brain and then I can converse with my brain to then have an objective, like decision-making process that is devoid of the emotion in that. So it's still making a decision like I would, but it is taking away all of the other like human elements to that. So you can have an objective thought process that is still your thought process. Now, I call bullshit on all of that, because actually being a human is about making emotional decisions sometimes, right? Like, and that is like lead from the heart or the head. Like, where does that come from? Like gut feel, all of that gets negated in a process like that. But it's interesting that people are in that space. And I now, if I need to, I can't remember the last time I Googled something as a starting point. I will go to ChatGPT. I will use deep research. I will sometimes use that process. So I can go in and say, I want to understand this topic, of create me 15 minutes worth of content, and then get it to read it to me. And that is like, I've basically created my own podcast and my own knowledge download that I can then go into. Like, I'm going to walk the dog for 15 minutes. Teach me about machine learning, or like, I don't know why I taught that, but like that I've never been able to do before. I'd have to go and find a specific podcast, trawl through it, and hope that that has the right like information. The downside to that is I am the one who is saying what I want to learn. So if you listen to a podcast, like we've gone off on loads of tangents today, those tangents wouldn't necessarily be picked up in that data. But as long as you're kind of pointing the right way, or you're asking it to give me, so here's the main topic I want to learn. Now give me peripheral topics around that and teach me about those as well.
Yeah.
Then you can expand the learning. But I think, yeah, my biggest fear is that we become intelligent, stupid people, as in, maybe that's the wrong way around, but like you were talking about it before, do we become so reliant on it we're not actually thinking anymore? And actually, I don't think that's how and maybe I am just blindly walking into that, but I don't think that's how I use it. I'm using it more of, I have an idea, I want you to help me research and understand this idea better.
Right. And I think that that's the more practical way of using it to benefit you, because you're almost using it like a teacher, which goes into the whole discussion of how teaching, I think, is that whole world is being turned upside down. But I do see it as, from a marketing angle. A lot of the time we build custom GPTs for our customers in their voice. That requires understanding their brand voice. That requires like very rigorous instructions so that it knows how to read, and like even doing a little bit of a competitive research to then have the right outputs. But a lot of people just want to ask ChatGPT for the topic ideas. It's like, no, that comes from you. You need to think of those ideas. That requires your personal thought, your experience. Don't let ChatGPT take that over. And as soon as you get there, that's when you just, ChatGPT is taken over and you're relying too much on it.
Have you asked ChatGPT to tell you about yourself? So ask it to tell you what it knows and what it thinks your tone of voice is and what kind of person you are. It is incredibly interesting, but it is a great way to infer your own tone of voice, because you say then. So when I do it, and it's pretty to a T, like I am like quite direct. I like basically speak my mind. I will ask direct questions. Like there's not a lot of fluff, generally speaking, around like how I engage with this stuff. So, and it has picked that up from the conversations I've had with it. And I am still one of those people that I will say please and thank you, because I think that's an important skill to maintain, because I will then very quickly start not doing that outside of it. And I do it even more now that Sam Altman came out and said it costs OpenAI millions by people saying, I was like doing it twice. Absolutely.
Please.
Yeah.
I will ask ChatGPT that question. Actually, I haven't. I've asked it to analyze how I think and where some gaps are in like just the way that I process or think about information. Okay, we diverted a little bit, just a little bit. You talked about how 3 years ago you started using AI. It was like kind of content generation. But the thing that sort of was impactful to me that I heard was that you always looked at the ROI for the customer, so that instead of charging them the same for the same output, you gave them more, showing them that there's more ROI in using the technology, but the output and the quality remain the same. And so beyond marketing, obviously that's 3 years ago, what's some other impact you've seen by implementing AI with your customers?
So I think probably the best use case to like give it some color is how we use it internally. So we're HubSpot partner, and as you'd expect, we use HubSpot as our CRM, and like very deep users of HubSpot, which is good because I mean you wouldn't trust a chef that doesn't eat its own food. So, but as part of that, we obviously like entrenched in HubSpot's AI tools. So like Breeze Intelligence. So they like prospecting agents, there are customer support agents, and the agentic piece is becoming a big part of, you can see it like the product roadmap of where they're heading.
Right.
And that's great because that's exactly where they should be heading in my honest opinion. Obviously I don't have much sway over that. The other thing that it's allowed us to do, because we use HubSpot, it is a very open platform in terms of how we can integrate into it. So what we've done is we've taken we've created our own agent framework that allows us to create agents that are built around the same knowledge base. That knowledge base is learning and constantly looking at the deltas between current state, the activity taken, and then the next state. So we're able to learn what's working, what's not working. We now use that across our sales and customer success functions. So we have automated deal reviews where it's suggesting next step actions. It's highlighting where there are issues, whether or not it thinks based on historic performance, we're going to hit close dates and all that kind of stuff, which is great, right? Like but there are thousands of tools that do that. This is just doing it in a way that, so we're putting that data back into the CRM and you can see all that and it's great. But the bit I like is it's almost coaching the sales team at that point. So have you done this? Have you considered involving this other point of contact? All those kind of, so like it is coaching on a framework. So we don't use Medpick, we don't use Spiced. We created our own, which was built off of experience, but also a lot of deep research that we've done through ChatGPT, where we've gone, give me an understanding of all the best in class sales frameworks out there, then overlay it with our needs, the way that we currently sell, the need that we have to sell with partners, and then we'll create a framework of that. So we use something called Scale Plus, which is our framework. That is baked into these deal reviews, and it uses that as a framework to then suggest and coach the sales teams to better closes, and more consistent closes is the aim. So deal reviews and coaching. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Scale Plus has a kind of a sister framework to it called CS Plus, which is same acronyms across it, but it is much more focused on retention and expansion. That's looking at like how do we reduce churn? How do we increase our expansion rate? So how do we sell this client more things? And like general happiness, it does like NPS prediction, all that. That is all built based on the existing data that we have. So our engagements, the data in the CRM, and then the frameworks, joint success plans, all of that goes into this. It assesses it, gives us an understanding of what those scores are. That then translates into, okay, here is a bunch of, so we've moved away from vibe-based customer success management, where we're going, feels good, the customer's in a happy space, like the relationship's good. But actually, the one thing I've learned about running an agency is the relationship can be good, but you could churn them the next week
very quickly
if things change. And that is, it's a horrible space to be. I mean, if you're an anxious person and you want to be liked, it's not a great space to be playing in. But what we've now done is made our entire sales and customer success process is all data driven. It is, so one of our big logo clients, we ran this against it when we were developing it out, and it was telling us from that the data was showing us that there was a real churn risk here. So not like serious churn risk, but like there's some real churn indicators in here that we need to address. I went through with the CSM. This is one of our like senior CSMs, amazing at her job. And she was like, no, I've just got off a call with them. The relationship's really, really strong. Like they love working with us. And then, so I was like, okay, good. We're building this out. Like, let's get on a call, talk me through where it's wrong so I can understand where we need to re-engineer it. Went through it, and piece by piece, every piece of data, those points were right. Like there is churn risk here. There is a churn indicator. We got to the end of it, and she was like, actually, yeah, I think there is a churn risk here. We need to be like, because they don't fit our normal ICP. They're like, there's changing in the POCs that we have at the customer. So like all these things as an agency, in a micro level, you'd be like, okay, that's one thing, like that's fine. But when you look at it at a macro level, and AI is able to look at all the data points, then you start to go, actually, there's a pattern there that goes, yeah, we need to address those. And now we know we've been able to address all of those, and actually the really solid relationship and great. And there's expansion there and all that. And over last month, we took our expansion rate from 5% to 35%, because it's also on a data level going, there is an opportunity here, that sell to that opportunity. And it's suggesting the opportunities right down to the level of, hey, this customer could do with you selling them more HubSpot Breeze credits. And that's a very low level line item for us.
Right.
And you're like, okay, let's sell that thing. And it's now we've made it data-led and process-driven. It has changed how we operate the business. And that's what we're starting to do for our customers as well. So going, okay, so it comes back to my point earlier, where do the friction points lie? The friction point for us in that is that our customer success processes were very, and like you've been on the other end of our customer success processes, very relationship driven, very like, I don't want to speak for you, but good people to work with. You liked working with us, feel like an extension team, and all of that is by design. But from an agency perspective, where's the data? I can't predict whether or not you're still going to like us next week. I can predict whether or not we're going to be delivering success, and whether or not like we are engaging with you enough. Those are the things I have control over. Your emotions and how you feel, I don't. So if we can turn around and say, I still want you to love us, but actually I want to make sure that we are delivering the services that we're supposed to be delivering at the same time.
Yeah, that's incredible to not only have the notification that, hey, there might be some churn with the data points to actually back it up, to get ahead of that, but then also understand where there's expansion opportunities within an account. You mentioned a few different tools that you would integrate into your CRM or whatever tool you might be using. But you named a bunch that this process almost eliminates or takes over because it's just an all-in-one, which is pretty incredible, and that's awesome to hear about the expansion that you've seen within that account as well from those indicators. Have you started implementing sort of that system that you have or parts of it within businesses as well? Your client.
So that the CS Plus side is only been live for us for 2 months, and we're still
Oh, it's
rolling it out
new.
to our
Okay.
team. So it's fairly new, but it's like we have live opportunities where people are exploring it. So people who are looking at it, like, you should go and look at the stuff that Elias Torres is doing. His new company, I think, is called Agency, where basically they are building AI specifically for CS. He's one of the co-founders of Drift originally.
Okay.
And from what I've seen, looks amazing. And it is, so if people are wanting to explore it on as like almost like a SaaS product, although I think AI tools are now like the anti-SaaS product, because you can just, anyway, whatever, that's another debate. But I think that is an area to look at in terms of tooling. But we are now building these in for clients, and that's a big part of what we are doing with. So you buy HubSpot, you don't just want it to be able to do the HubSpot things. HubSpot want it to be central to your entire organization, because it's designed to be a platform that you can bolt other things in. They don't, if the platform is solid and central to your organization, then you can bolt in the other best in breed tech. And the way the speed that AI is moving, I don't think any SaaS company will be able to keep pace with everything that everybody wants to do. Because I can now go to Lovable. Have you seen Lovable? You can literally go and say, like, with a paragraph, build me. And I did it just for a laugh the other day. Like, I like playing like one of those block games, almost like Tetris, but it doesn't move and you have to make lines and that. I like playing that. I really don't like that every time the game ends, I have to wait for the ads to play.
Yeah.
I went to Lovable and said, build me an iOS version of this app. So I just made it. And that's where we're getting to, is I can go and say, I want to build this thing, build it for me. No developers, no heavy cost. And you need some experience to be able to like get it live and all that. But actually, now we're not far off of the whole tech space changing so dramatically that you don't need Salesforce or HubSpot or Agency or any of these people to actually do the thing for you. You need to be pointed in the right direction, but you don't actually need them to build the tech. I'm talking 2, maybe 5 years in the future, but you should just be able to go to your computer and go, I want to do this thing, build the tech for me. And that'll be it. So that's where we start to get into, and that's why I think HubSpot and all the other tech companies moving into the agent space is the right move, because the cloud-based tech, as it was and is, like the Zendesks, the Salesforces, all of that will start to become defunct.
Yeah.
And actually, my point there was that we then get into that's where consultancy becomes key, because if you're a large organization, you don't want the most junior members in your team defining the tech that you are using as an organization. It needs to be thought out. It needs to be doing things in a way like brand voice, security protocols, all of that still needs to be built into what we're doing. So how do you do that? That's where the consultative level comes in.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's where that expertise becomes super, super important. Not just what ChatGPT tells you, but actually knowing and having seen and having done it becomes really important. Thank you so much for all the information. I know we covered a ton of different topics, but it's really inspiring and motivating even for me to hear all the different advancements and evolvements that Six and Flow has gone through. I look forward to continuing to pay attention and see all the changes to come ahead. And thank you so much for your time, Rich. We'll definitely be in touch.